Hi, everyone. I'm Fiona Curry. I'm a psychologist at the TDSB, and I'm also a parent of a special needs child. And I've got a very special person along with me today, a colleague, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. My name's Annette Grossi. I'm a social worker with the Toronto District School Board, and I too am a parent of a child with special needs.
So we thought we would just have a chat. Annette, you and I don't know each other very well. We've spoken a
Right.
couple of times, but knowing that you have a child with special needs, I automatically know certain things about you. I know that you're probably stressed, very busy, but on the other hand, I know that you're really must be really resilient, meaning that you've problem solved a lot, you've probably overcome a lot of difficulties, and you're probably a really great multitasker. Am I right?
It depends on the day and how much sleep I've had. But yes, I agree. I think those are all the qualities that we all have as special needs parents. And I think to add to that, there's an open-mindedness, I think, that has been gifted to me as I became a parent to a child with special needs too, and seeing the world in a very different way. So I guess that's something else to bring light to, because we're not sort of always seeing things the way that everybody else does.
Tell me a little bit about that. How do you think having a special needs child makes you more open-minded, do you think?
Well, I think you have to give way to the notions that, you know exactly how your child's destiny will be. And I think as parents, we give birth to these lovely little humans, and we, have this idea, this notion of what life is going to be for them. We'll get a great education, we'll give them as many opportunities as we can, and hopefully like post-secondary or a great job or marriage or whatever that might look like. And I think when you start to, look at your child who is often going to be deemed other, you start to say, well, what does that other look like for him, her, or them in the future? So I think you start to look at life differently, and you start to value things differently, and you start to cherish things differently. So I think that's what I mean when I say a much more of an open mind.
That makes total sense. So you're saying that your expectations shift a little bit or a lot. And that, what I thought of actually when you said open minded, and I think you'll agree with this. I find that I'm much more open minded and less judgmental about other parents. And when I see a child in a store, let's say having a tantrum, or I'm working with parents and I'm hearing about their struggles, I'm not quick to judge. I try to put myself in their shoes, and every
Yeah.
situation is different. You and I have talked, even though we are special needs parents, we are both really, really lucky. We're both, both have good jobs. We're both privileged in many ways. So
Hmm.
when you're working with parents and you see the struggles, I don't know about you, but I have a lot more, not to say that other professionals don't, but I think it gives us a different insight into what's going on.
Absolutely. And I think that builds on the empathy then, right? Because it's easy, I think, for us to sort of understand there is a reason for certain behaviors. Rather than focusing on that behavior, let's look at what might be causing it. And I think sometimes as professionals, and I speak about this myself, prior to being a parent to my son, I thought of that. That's what I focused on. That was my goal when I worked on kids who were having challenging behaviors. It was the behavior. Let's change the behavior. Now what I have is the insight, like you said, to know behavior is caused by something. Behavior is communication. So let's look at what they're trying to say to us, whether it be in a way that I'm deemed okay or the world does, or whether it be in a way that might be uncomfortable for other people. So accepting that and starting from where their needs are, and dealing with that.
Acceptance is a huge
Mm.
factor. I totally agree. Do you want to give everybody a little bit of background, maybe in terms of your family situation?
Yep.
Um, then I can too, and then maybe we can talk about what our situations are like during the pandemic.
Okay, sounds good. So I am a mom of three young boys, step parent to a young woman who just got married. So we'll park her at
Wow.
this point. She's not a kid anymore. But three boys who are all deemed exceptional at the school level. But my middle son is on the autism spectrum. He was diagnosed probably a little later than I in hindsight might have looked to. He was It was a week after his third birthday, and part of that was lagging, listening to maybe advice from the people around me, reflecting on his gender, and certain things happen differently for genders. And then, I think something just clicked and said to me, I need to get help. And I reached out to one of our colleagues who gave me the name of a developmental pediatrician. And like I said, it was a week after his third birthday, and we went into her office and we sat there. And in less than an hour, she's like, "Your son's on the spectrum." And so it was, relief and dread and worry and fear and grief all at the same time. But that piece of relief I remember specifically because it was like, okay, so now I understand what I have to do, right? And it almost kind of kicked me into drive at that point. So, to say the least, it's learning how to navigate the systems, learning what's available to him, learning about, what his needs might be and how they'll differ as he grows. And every day is going to be a different day. Learning how to support his brothers and manage that. So, I mean, siblings in particular have a very different experience when they're raised in a family with kids with special needs, and always trying to be mindful of their needs as well, remembering that they too are exceptional, right? So we're learning and we're juggling every day and finding our way through it.
We've got so much to talk about.
I know.
You brought up so many good topics. Let me just give our viewers just a bit of background information about my family, and then maybe we can talk a little bit about, as I said, maybe what a typical day looks like, and then how the pandemic has kind of upended all of that.
Mm.
I have two children. I have a daughter who just completed her first year at university. And then I have a son who has autism and intellectual disability and ADHD. And he's 16. He's nonverbal. He uses iPad software, Proloquo,
Mm.
to speak for him, and it's been quite a journey. It seems like forever ago that we were looking at whether or not he had any issues, and so he was diagnosed quite early with autism when he was 2. We had a great family doctor who pointed out a few concerns which we shared. And if I could give some advice to parents out there, whether or not they know they have a special needs
Mhm.
child or they're wondering, I think the earlier that you get your questions answered, the better. I know there's so much anxiety and dread that goes into, sometimes it's better we don't want to know, but
Exactly.
yeah, but the resources that you can access, it's much easier to do that when they're young. They learn things more quickly when they're young, so you can really have a big impact. And if it turns out that your child doesn't have special needs, then you've lost nothing in trying
Right.
to figure things out. So um,
Yeah.
having a teenager now, that's a whole different story. I kind of think sometimes that the challenges that I faced when he was much younger, in some ways, it's gotten a little easier. In some ways, it's kind of like little child, little problem, big child, big problem. So it
Yeah.
depends on the issue.
A little bit about what we do in the board, specifically job related, and then maybe now you move into sort of what life is like now.
For sure. So as I said, I'm a psychologist. I've been at the school board for many years now. Um, so my job, excuse me, is I have a whole bunch of different things that I do. I work at different schools, and I'm part of the school team, as I know you are too. And at each school, we have different other professionals that we work with, as well as working with teachers and principals and other staff. And my job is basically to assess children for learning difficulties or emotional and behavioral difficulties. I also can provide some short term counseling and work with some in terms of other interventions like helping a child with their reading skills, or for one of my special needs schools, I work mostly with teachers to figure out maybe why a child is behaving in a certain way,
Mhm.
and then coming up with a program to help reduce those behaviors. So that's basically what I do. Tell me a little bit about what your role is like.
So there's some overlap, I think, in terms of what our professions do. And you said it, we're part of a school team, support team that works with a lot of our other consultants and support staff. So including speech and occupational therapists, child and youth workers. And we meet regularly to discuss kids and their needs and and what supports might be needed for them to be successful in school. So as a social worker, that's a lot of things. And I think sometimes when we have these meetings, we often find people get a little bit worried. Why is the social worker involved? Why does the social worker have to come? We have such a bad rap in our profession, but really, I think when we work in school settings, our job is to support students' well-being, and so that they can be the best students that they can be. And that's a lot of things. My dad always used to say, I'm a jack of all trades and master of none, right? So we really are generalists. And some of us are really skilled at doing clinical work and seeing kids regularly one-on-one. Some of us do a lot of really good grassroots stuff and develop programs. Some of us work really well with families, and that's something that I've kind of come to do a lot more of in the last several years, is really helping families navigate. So for some reason, I seem to have found my way into a lot of my ISP classes, or our small class placements, and supporting those families and students, teachers, and working in conjunction with my support staff colleagues to make sure that kids have what they need to do well. Part of my other role is that I'm an attendance counselor. And so really supporting kids who are either refusing to attend school, whose parents are struggling to bring them to school, and to ensure that, that they understand the reason why it's important for kids to be at school, and find other solutions, right? For lots of reasons, kids don't do well in the school setting. So supporting families through that as well. So it's changed a bit now, all of our roles, I'm sure, for you too.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we're trying our best to still meet the needs of our students and our families and our schools. It's obviously changed, and
Yeah,
well, most children are now have moved to an online learning platform. We continue to work a lot of times behind the scenes,
yeah,
supporting teachers so that they can support their students, doing some mental health checks for teachers that may be struggling, or students or parents that may be struggling. Where we've seems like we've worked out a process by which we can actually provide some counseling online. Isn't that right?
yeah. That's a new process for all of us. I'm sure it's going to have some kinks, but I think we're all figuring out how to do this best right now. And I think the only real way we can do that logistically is virtually.
Exactly. And I can't even imagine, how you're maintaining that, what we call work home balance. I know for me, it's been challenging. My husband also works in my department, so we are always tagging each other. It's like, okay, you can now do what you need to do for 15 minutes or an hour, and then the other one has our son.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm wearing a lot of hats right now, all at the same time. some days I don't feel like I'm doing any of my jobs particularly well. And I'm sure a lot of parents out there are either struggling in the same way, having to work from home,
Absolutely.
or if they're a full-time caregiver, now having to care for your children 24/7.
Absolutely, absolutely, and trying to do it in a way that you feel some success. And I think, like you said, there's going to be days that you just don't feel it in any realm, and other days that it's like, you know what, I've ignored the kids all day, but I'm going to take care of this at nighttime, right? So I think finding a flow and a balance that works for you every day, right? And every day is going to be different.
Exactly. So why don't maybe you tell our viewers, share with them a little bit about what your days look like during the pandemic.
Well, right now there's not a lot of structure, to be honest with you. Structure is not my forte, never has been. So I think we're taking it day by day. So yeah, we're taking things day by day, and some days, I'm really regimented. We wake up. Nico continues to do his therapy during the week, and so we're fortunate enough to receive funding for him to continue to do some therapy. So he does ABA therapy online. He does that twice a day, morning half an hour, afternoon half an hour. I find that helps all of us because it's really the only respite I have for him to do some really solid structure work that doesn't need to rely upon me, right? So that's been really helpful maintaining that. And I'm working with a lot of families right now to continue to try and find access to those resources because a lot of them are available online. It's just really just getting the logistical stuff in place to get that going. So we do that morning breakfast. Kids wake up all different times. I've got a 12-year-old who thinks he's a teenager all of a sudden and is in bed at all hours of the night and waking up at all hours of the afternoon. So there's him, who I don't even manage so much, but need to help keep them focused a little bit. And so we do our thing, and I get online when Nico gets online. My partner will make sure that the kids are being tended to if something else is going on. Kind of let the kids have some free reign in the morning, and then we do lunch, and we try to do all of our meals together because I think it just kind of helps us ground ourselves. When things are too piecemeal, it gets a little bit away from all of us. So this way, kind of helps us get back on track and get kind of refocused for the rest of the day. And then afternoon happens, Nico does his therapy, and then we go from there.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot. It's fairly similar to what we're going through. I would say that we have a lot more structure in our day, but we've always had a lot of structure just because my son, I call him the Energizer Bunny. He does not stop jumping and leaping from the moment he wakes up till his head hits the pillow. And so if someone had told me that I was going to have to be home with him without any kind of respite, without any schooling uh, for this long, I would have burst into tears, and I would have. This would be close to my worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I keep telling myself, and other people say it as well, it's a marathon and not a sprint. So I try not to think too much beyond the current day because it can get so overwhelming if you start thinking, well, what's going to happen in the summer? Is this camp going to be on? What's going to happen with school? All of that. So overwhelming. So I try
Mm-hmm.
to focus on the day. What we've found for my son is, and I'll give a credit mostly to my husband, they go on an hour and a half power walk.
Oh.
And it's pretty much the only thing that will help calm him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's good for another little while. We're fortunate that we have a car, so we're able to take him on drives. And for some reason, he doesn't seem to be bothered that we're not going anywhere. There's no destination.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a drive, and then we come home. And I know a lot of families aren't able to do that. A lot of moms and dads that I've talked to are worried about taking their children outside because they're worried that their children might touch something.
Mm-hmm.
because my son's a little older and he does touch a lot of things, but where we walk, it's not very populated, so we're not interacting with too many people. So it's been pretty safe that way. And
Yeah.
honestly, I know there's a lot of families out there that are really, really struggling. And if they couldn't get their children outside, that they would be worried for their safety, frankly.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, I mean, just talking mental health, that removal from your space, I think getting out of your space, whatever that looks like for families, it could just be, just down to your front porch or onto a balcony or any of that kind of thing. I think that really is such a vital part of, getting through your day, because I think you get into this routine right now, right? And it could be easy to get lost in taking care of yourself in ways that just don't maybe motivate you too, right? And so getting out of the house is a vital one. And for our guy, he needs to be out of the house, absolutely, and regularly.
I should just mention that, you and I both have children with similar special needs. There's some differences too, but we recognize that there are parents out there who have children with a variety of special needs. So, it may be something like a learning disability, attention issues. You may have a medically fragile child. You may have there's so many different
Exactly.
types of special needs. I guess what we're hoping is to try to figure out, what we're saying everything may not apply to you, someone's particular situation. But I find that even if you meet a parent whose child has different special needs, there's usually something you can bond with them about.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. And I'm glad that you brought that to light because I think, I hope that, our conversation helps parents who are in a similar circumstance realize, that the best way for us to do this is by finding our community. And for me, community has meant other special needs parents. I've learned so much about my kid, about the system, about myself, and just finding, my way to people who similar situations are similar. And I can say that even as parents of special needs kids, there's a spectrum, right? And we might not always see eye to eye on things, or we might not have exactly the same situation. I think it really what bonds us is bringing the notion of caring for children who might be seen by the world as different and what that means for us in our day to days. So I'm glad you brought light to that.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I agree with you. I have found that speaking with other parents of special needs children, I can be completely honest. Nothing I say will shock them, and vice versa.
Exactly.
I feel like I can let my guard down. I do think sometimes, though, and it's hard to not to do this, but you're always going to be kind of subtly comparing yourself. When you're talking to other parents, perhaps who don't have special needs children, it really does feel like sometimes we're living in parallel universes. And so you may be thinking, oh, I have it so much harder than they do. And maybe you do. But what I found is that you can always find someone who has it worse off than you do too.
Hmm.
So I try not to compare myself. I try to just say, yeah, okay, that might be the same, that might be different, but you're never going to meet somebody who's in exactly the same situation. So just try to find the things that you have in common.
Absolutely. And you usually find out that it's quite a bit.
Yeah, that's true.
I,
One of the other things that we wanted to talk about, we talked a little bit about siblings, about how it can be challenging to meet everybody's needs and for them to get along. But then, for many of us living with a spouse 24/7, that can present a different kind of challenge, wouldn't you say?
yes. Many of us don't work with our spouses. So this is a whole new reality. I consider myself fortunate. I have a very supportive partner in my marriage, in parenting, in managing the home. We're really good, I think, at being able to, like you said, tag you're it. I need you to take on the role of, parenting the kids. I'm going to go just veg out and do the dishes right now, right? And being able to do that sort of thing has been so helpful, and I'm so grateful that I've been able to, rely on him in the way that I've been able to rely on him. It's not easy. We're always together, right? And you find yourself in the day whirling your way into certain parts of the house where nobody will find you because it's just like always there. But I think, it is also important to remind ourselves that this is a relationship that has to be nurtured. So I found out, like, we can still do date night, and we've made a point of doing that, even once a week, of making sure, what, kids, you guys go do your thing, find your way upstairs a little earlier, maybe. Mom and dad are going to watch a movie, and we're going to have a glass of wine together, and we're just going to be just the two of us together. So I found that that's been a helpful way to kind of get through some of the challenging stuff. But also, like I said, finding a spot in your house you can hide from everybody, that's also a helpful tool.
Yeah, you have to be sometimes creative with places to hide, even for a couple of minutes.
The bathroom with the shade over the bathtub, I'll take it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I would say that having everybody in one place all the time definitely has its challenges. I find that, and I don't know if this happens to you, but I find that when I'm stressed, you start to play these little mind games with yourself a little bit, like how much have I done for the house and for the kids, and do you feel like you've done more than your spouse, and maybe he or she feels differently, maybe they feel like they've done more, and you have this little game, who feels like they're in a situation where they've given more and who's in a situation where they feel like they've taken more. And I bet you both people think that they've given more. So I'm trying not to do that because I find that can be really, it can just make things worse.
It is a danger zone for sure when you start to compare your roles, because our roles can be very different, and there's flex, and I'm sure a lot of homes find themselves flexing that, like, today I'll take the schoolwork, tomorrow you do it, or in other places it's very rigid, right? And I think that when you're in a place where it's becoming overwhelming and too much, that's the natural place to go, is I'm doing more than you are. um, uh, I think, catching yourself is really important, and finding yourself and asking yourself why. And if you really are doing more, how do you speak to your partner about that? And how do you start the conversation? Be like, I need you to help out a little bit more. Can you take on this extra task for me today? My mind is fried, my body's fried. I'm finding a lot of people are really tired throughout all of this, right? There's a lot of exhaustion, mental and maybe not as much physical, because we've taken from all of the movement that we do in our days, and we've become so stationary in our spaces, and we've relied on this as a form of communication. And so there's a lot of stimulus going on throughout this. Our minds I think are being very taxed by it, and I think that, when you're tired, you don't always think so clearly, right? So just trying your best to really, like, do the check-ins with your kids, do it with your partner if you have one, right? And if you don't have one, if you're doing this solo, um, man, I bow to you, because I see that you are everything and anything to your kids. And to think that, there are a lot of parents who are on their own, like, you're a gift to your kids, because, like, every day you wake up and you do this, and you do it maybe with, outside supports, or, extra or external family supports. But at this time when you can't access those resources, it literally is just you. So I want to send a kudos to all those parents who are doing this on their own, for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think it's so much more challenging when you're on your own. And I think all the more reason why you have to figure out creative ways to carve out a little bit of time. I know for many of the families I work with, it's such a struggle because some of the kids don't sleep regularly.
Mm,
So you might have a parent who is sleep deprived every day, and that's just a regular day, never mind the pandemic.
exactly.
A lot of our parents might even use the time when their child's at school to sleep. So just thinking about all those other parents out there, especially the ones who may be on their own, maybe sleep deprived, maybe experiencing a lot of behavioral challenges. So maybe, they're getting hurt. Um, this is really, really tough. And I think, we want to spend a little bit of time talking about little things that maybe you can do to kind of help yourself get through this. But to say right up front that, if you're really struggling and you're worried about your safety or about the safety of your child, then there are, definitely some resources that you can access to get immediate help.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if we're going to be able to link those in the video or, with the video, but Annette, is there one place that parents could go to really quickly to see a bunch of resources?
Well, I know that Holland Bloor Review put out a wonderful list when the pandemic came out, and it had a number of different resources. And I know Community Living has been providing us ongoing information and resources throughout the pandemic as well. And I have to say, one of the other silver linings to this is the access that we actually are getting to our community agencies. In a regular day, you could be on a wait list for weeks, months, maybe years. Now to be able to access an agency that offers such wonderful, meaningful support and know you're not going to have to wait. I mean, it might be virtual, it might not be in person, but to know that you can actually connect with appropriate resources in a much more timely fashion, I think has been really helpful for me helping families navigate through some of this. And I know things are being expedited as well in terms of access to financial resources. So I would suggest if you're lost, if you're overwhelmed, start with your child's school and reach out to the resources that are available to you and ready to support you. You might already know who the psychologist or the social worker or whomever you're connected to. It might be the speech path. If you have a connection to that person, call them. We're all available. We're all, online. We all have our contact information still. Our phones are still working. We can help navigate through some of those things as well, and maybe get you connected to things. Your school principal, if that's the person you're most connected to, can help connect you to us, and we can, either through a phone call or maybe a virtual meeting, just get in touch with you and help navigate you to some of the resources. I've had a number of families that, have really been struggling the last little while, trying to navigate some of these things, have some really great success. So I think right now is the time, reach out, talk to people. The other thing I want to say is build your community. I mean, if we're all online right now, let's not lie about that, right? I mean, many of us use social media as an outlet to kind of decompress maybe and find recipes and all those types of things, but it's also a great place to build your parent community of your parent colleagues, so to speak. I know old people like us use Facebook, but that's where I've gotten so many great connections to organizations and other parents in my area. We've been able to kind of find our way to doing like activities and events and things like that, and just just a social support too. Like parents will go online and just say, "Oh, what a day, man. This is what's going on and I couldn't deal with it," or trying to navigate. And then you will get a flurry of parents who give you suggestions, or I'm going to privately message you and let me reach out and let me help you and help navigate through this. And I always often think too about the parents who don't have language, like English is not their first language, and trying to help them navigate through some of this stuff too. And like I said, if you're in a better place, maybe reach out to a parent who is might be struggling. If you're in a better place, even just call and check in and just say, I see you, I recognize this is you're doing amazing things. You got to help prop each other up through some of these more challenging times too.
I love that. I think that's wonderful advice, in terms of reaching out to get yourself resources and support, and also to try to connect with other families. And as you say, if you know somebody who's really struggling, and you have those extra mental resources to share with them,
Mhm.
sometimes that's all you need to do, is just to listen and to let them know that they're not alone. I think that's wonderful. And I think that there are small things that people can do to try to build up that resiliency, that ability
Mm.
to kind of weather the storm. Because I think many parents don't realize how many skills that they've developed. I mean, if you think back to before you were a parent and what you knew then and what you know now, you have developed so many skills. Um, and you need to recognize that and to celebrate that. You are the expert of your own child and your own children. And of course, we're all going to make mistakes. But I think it's important to recognize the skills that you have developed. And then also to, most of our day is spent meeting the needs of other people, whether it's
Mhm.
your children, work, your spouse, it might be elderly parents that you're worried about. We're kind of getting bombarded from every angle, and especially as moms, but also dads too, sometimes we
Sure.
just feel like we give, and we're not getting back. So it's important to figure out what is going to make you feel happy or content in the moment, and to try and to make sure that you communicate that to other family members, and then to take the time, because even if it's just for 2 minutes, 30 seconds, to take some
Mm.
deep breaths, if
Yeah.
you can do that and stop and pause, you will be a better parent to your child.
It's true, and I joked about hiding in the bathtub, but sometimes it is about removing yourself and just giving yourself a moment to just kind of decompress, just kind of think about it, or just shut it off, right? If now's not the time to deal with it, maybe you know what, you park it and you say, you know what, I know this is too hard for me to think about and actually deal with this in a rational way right now. I'm going to find my way and take a break. And for those who say, well, that's really nice because I can't take a break, you're right. Some of us can't. We don't get to decide when that break is going to come. I think, recognizing that you are still getting through and you are still supporting your kids and loving your kids. And that needs to always be reminded, I think, to us is that we're always doing, but it's all in the name of love. We love our kids so much. I can't tell you how many times people look at me, who aren't raising kids with special needs, and say, I don't know how you do it. And I always want to say, what a dumb thing to say. What do you mean you don't know how do you do it? How do any of us do it? None of us are doing this perfectly. None of us could do this perfectly. We get out of bed every day to the best of our ability, and we put food on the table for our kids to the best of our ability, and we show our love to them to the best of our ability. And I think we just reach out when we don't feel we can anymore do this, and get the help that you need. There's lots of great resources that we can all access. So keeping that in mind as we go through these really hard times.
Yeah, I think you've hit upon a lot of really great points. One of the things that I try to keep in mind, is the concept of good enough, whether it's good enough
Mm.
parenting, good enough work, whatever it is. Some of us, more than others, are perfectionists. Maybe you're not a perfectionist in terms of your work or in other areas of your lives, but in terms of your kids, we always want to make sure that we're doing the best, and we worry because they do have delays in some way in terms of their development. We're always worried, well, if we don't do this, we're losing time and we're bad parents, and we make ourselves feel guilty and ashamed
Mm.
and all of that. And if you can say to yourself, is it good enough? In other words, do I have to give 100% of my time and my energy to every single thing that I'm doing? What prioritize? What are things are the most important? And then if something's kind of in the middle, it's a medium priority. Do you have to give 100%? Maybe if you gave 60% or 80%, would it be good enough?
Hmm.
And then the other thing too is allowing the other adults or responsible children in your home to do some of the things that maybe you do that you don't need to be doing, but they're
Yeah.
not, even though you're going to teach them, they may not do it the way you want them
Right.
to. And you have to decide, is it good enough?
Is it good enough? Is it good enough that those corners of the bed aren't tucked in the way that I want them to be? Right. That's definitely a journey in parenting, right? When we're teaching our kids those skills, letting it go and letting go. I think for me has been a very meaningful way of strategizing and coping, right? Because I have to let go of, like you said, this need for perfection when it comes to my kids, and that constant comparison that I would do at times, sometimes to neurotypical kids, to able-bodied kids, to whatever it was. It just became overwhelming, and that's where I started to say it's time to let go of this perception, let go of this need, let go of things going a certain way, and it will be okay. And it always is, right? It's just adapting, and I think that that's a skill set we all acquire in parenting. But I think that's become a spidey sense for us. We just adapt very easily to many things. And I think that's what I want to bring note to is our resilience, right? If we think about parenting a special needs child, we've become resilient to the fact that, you know what, we had a bad day, we've had a bad couple of months, we've got a new behavior that's become challenging, whatever it might be that is the challenge. What do we need to do to problem solve and get through this and bounce back? And I think that's a skill that, we really have honed. And that's what I think I remind a lot of the parents that I talk to right now is think about what you've been through. Think of the adversity that you've and the challenges that you've met, you've conquered, and you've been able to kind of put behind you as if it's nothing. And that's what's going to get you through these next several weeks, months, whatever it might be, to adapt and be resilient to our new beginning. Right? This is a new normal that we're entering, and I think we all pretty much know that eventually things will settle and we'll find things to be okay again.
Yeah, you're right. And the couple of quotes that always stay in my mind, one of them is coping is a process, it's not a destination. So that means what works one day may not work another day. You may be more successful one day in your own mind than another day, and that's
Mm.
okay. Failure is okay. You're not going to be successful in everything that you're doing. Um, and the other thing is, I love this quote. I think I saw it on an Autism Ontario website one time. It says, "Your track record for getting through difficult days is 100%."
Ah, I love it. It's
Yeah,
true. It's
yeah.
true.
It really rings true with me because as bad as the day has gone yesterday, the sun comes out, you get up, you may not be happy to get up, you may be dreading the next day, but the fact is, it goes on and you deal with the new day head on.
That's right. That's right. And I think that's what's going to help us all get through all of this.
Absolutely. So I think maybe this is a good place to wrap up. I
Mhm.
just wanted to give a shout out to our Twitter handle at the Mental Health and Wellbeing Twitter handle. It's at TDSB underscore M as in mother, H W B as in boy. And give us some feedback.
Mhm.
Check out the other videos here that different people have made on our YouTube channel. Let us know if you'd like us to talk again about any specific topics. We might be able to arrange to do this again. And just let us know, your general comments.
And take care.
Yes, most of all, take care. And I know that when people say we're all in this together, I know that really bothers a lot of people. it's true. We're all in this together, yet we're all alone at the same time. But
Mhm.
know that we're thinking of you, and we're really rooting for you.
Yeah. Thanks, Fiona. It's been great
Okay,
talking.
it's been great. Thanks.